So we're in good shape here. What we want to do next is make it so that we don't use the same 6 colors every single time. Instead, we want to generate 6 random colors and fill this array with those 6 random colors and then pick one of those. To generate those colors, I'm actually going to write another function to help us out. So our function, I'm going to erase the hard-coded array, and I'm going to set colors equal to our function call, which we'll call generate random colors. And it doesn't exist yet, and it's going to take a single argument that decides how many colors to generate in the array. So if we want an array with 3 items, which we will want eventually, when we go to easy mode versus hard mode, we want 6. So we'll start with 6. That's what we want when the page loads. Then we need to create the generate random colors function that takes a number and returns X number of random colors inside of an array. So I'll do that down here. Function generate random colors, and that should take a argument that we'll just call num. And then inside of here, I'll write my pseudocode. So I'm going to make an array. I'm going to add num random colors to array, and then I'm going to return that array at the very end. So to start, this is the easiest part, make an array. It's just an empty one. So we'll call it ARR, just an empty array. And then at the bottom, we're just going to return the same array. The hard part is the logic that goes in between. So in here, we need to add num random colors. So what that means is we need to repeat something num number of times. So 6 times or 3 times. So we'll use a loop to do that. So we'll start with our loop. For var I equals 0, I is less than num I plus plus. And it doesn't matter if we start at 0 or if we start at 1 and we make this less than or equal to, because we're not actually going to use I. It's just a way to loop through 3 times, 6 times, num times. And then in here, we're going to actually get random color and push into array. So this line is actually just repeat num times. So I'm going to make a separate function actually that will generate the random color for us. And I'm just going to call that one random color. So function random color. And what you're seeing is that I have a function here, generate random colors, that I call. Inside of that one, I'm calling another function just called random color. And that's really just to break our code up, make it clear, modular, what does what. We could have everything in no functions at all. It could just be what people would call spaghetti code, just all over the place. So we're going to add some functions here to add some structure. And again, at the very end of this project, when we have it completed, it looks good, all the functionality is there, I'll have an optional video on refactoring it. And I'll talk about how we can change things around, make them a little cleaner, a little prettier, but it will work exactly the same way. So to start, random color. To make a random color, we're going to need to pick a red from 0 to 255. Whoops. From 0 to 255. And then we need to pick a green from 0 to 255, and then a blue. And so to pick any number from 0 to 255, we also need to use math.random. So it's going to be math.random. That gives us between 0 and 1. It doesn't include 1. We need to multiply by 256 because, remember, we're rounding down. So we want 255 to be the greatest number possible. So we need to multiply by 1 more, 256. And then we need to floor that. So math.floor. So I'll go to my console and paste in this code. You can see we get a random number between 0 and 255. And you probably won't see that it actually goes to 255. You'll just have to trust me on that one. But you can see at least it gets close. I think we saw 253. That's good enough for now. And you'll also see all our squares went to purple. And that's because our generate random colors doesn't return anything. So it just returns an empty string. So we're not actually looping through and giving a color to each one. So it's just taking the default purple from our CSS. Just a side note there. So this will generate a number from 0 to 255. We'll save that to a variable called R. And then we'll do the same thing for green and for blue. So just like this, space this correctly and change the names, so G and B, that will give us 3 numbers from 0 to 255. And the worst part is synthesizing them into this big string that follows the format of RGB, parentheses, and then the numbers inside are G and B. And that means a lot of opening and closing strings and plus signs. So let's start. It will look like this. We're going to have RGB and then an opening parenthesis and then plus the red channel, this number from 0 to 255, plus a comma, plus the value of G, plus another comma, plus the value of B, plus our closing parenthesis. And we should be good to go now. It's this big string. And what we want to do is actually return that string, just like that. So return this big string, and that will generate one random color. So it's a lot of work for one color. 3 different numbers, 0 to 255. We put them together with commas between them, parentheses around them, the letters RGB. And then we return that so we can use it up here. And if we want to just test if that works, let's go ahead and refresh the page, go to our console, and just try calling random color. And that looks good to me. We're getting a random color, parentheses are correct, the commas are all good. Let's go now and use that up here. So we're going to call that random color, and we're going to push that into our array here, ARR. So ARR.push, and we don't have to use push, but that's what I'm going to do here. And this will now build us a nice array of colors. So generate random colors 6, we call this. It repeats 6 times. Each time through, it pushes in a random color to the array. So I'm going to just move our comment up here. There we go. And to verify that that works, if we refresh, you can see now we get 6 random colors. And not only that, our random color that we picked, the one color that we picked from the array, also changes. So we didn't break that. Everything still works. Or does it? Let's see. So if I click on some of these colors, try again, try again, try again, maybe I just have really bad luck, but no, something's wrong. So the problem's a little bit tricky. It's a little similar to the bug that I brought up when we did the scorekeeper game, when we were comparing things right here. If we're checking if the user is right, if they picked the right color, something was going wrong before where we had a number and we were comparing it to a string. In this case, it's a little bit different. So let me show you. I'm just going to do another console.log, clicked color, and then picked color. And let's just see what they look like. Maybe they're slightly different. Let's refresh the page and open up the console, and let's start clicking. So this one is medium amount of red, a little green, and quite a bit of blue. So let's click on some, and notice the numbers on the left, the string RGB, and the one on the right. And of course, these ones don't match. But if we click on the right one, you can see that when they do match, it still thinks that we're wrong. It says try again. And if you compare the two strings here, this one is the clicked color. This is what's coming back when we click on an element and we ask for this .style.background. And this is the color that we picked from the array. So somehow they're slightly different. And what happens is that when we actually set the background color of an element, CSS automatically adds in, or the DOM automatically adds in spaces between. So to fix that, what we want to do is just add spaces here between our numbers, so after the commas. And if we do that, they'll then compare and be equal to one another. So that's kind of a tricky bug. It just has to do with the way that we're comparing things with triple equals. And it's not that double equals would fix that anyways. Double equals doesn't ignore spaces or anything. But it's just a problem with how we generated the colors. So if we try this again and refresh, now let's just click around. You can see that our spaces are here, and these definitely will match once we click the right color, which is the very last one, and we get our correct. So definitely a tricky bug there. To wrap up, let's just try playing a game. I'm going to full screen it and get rid of the console and refresh and admire our random colors. The last thing that we could do is when we guess it correct, we could also change the H1 background like I did here. So when you guess the right color, it changes the background color as well. And that's a simple change. All we need to do is select the H1, So H1, and we can just select it. It's the only H1 on the page. So up here, I'm just going to select at the bottom var H1 equals document.querySelector H1. Save that. And then when the user guesses correctly, which is right here, we're going to change H1 dot background or style dot background. And that should now equal clicked color. And we'll save that. Go to the correct version of our game, refresh, and let's try clicking. And there we go. Definitely we have a ways to go with our styling compared to this, but we're getting there with the logic. So you guess incorrectly, they disappear by just changing the background color. And if you guess correctly, they all change color, and the H1 changes as well. In the next video, we're going to add the play again functionality, and we'll add a little bit more styling.